Hello again, everyone. Edwin Leonard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be dissertating and talking about something a little bit different today, and it's about, in my opinion, what people think about the zodiac signs, and it does apply and pertain to the sun, moon, and ascendant for all these signs. So anyway, what this is basically about is it's about when people see zodiac signs, the 12 of them, what do they see? What is their perception of them? Now, the perception of them often will correspond, of course, with their natural attributes and traits. However, in some instances, there may be some traits or their perception might be a little bit different than what these zodiac signs really what they feel they are, or maybe what they are actually about. So anyway, let me get started. Well, the first sign, okay, Aries. When I see when I see Aries, and I think when a lot of others see Aries, they may come across as often as maybe being strongly acerbic or abrasive. Aries may come across as difficult, but and sometimes very pushy, I think, is how others will see them, and can get irritated easily. But on the positive side, others can see Aries as being very fearless and bold and very courageous. And I think Aries may not always see themselves like as abrasive, for example, but others may see them that way. And I think Aries a lot of times just likes to get to the heart of the matter and can be very straightforward, is what that is really more about. But anyway, the next sign is talk about Taurus. Now, Taurus can often be seen as somebody on the negative side, blinded by their own viewpoint, oblivious to others' opinions, sometimes stubborn and obstinate, but often have strong willpower. And as many of you may know, I have a Taurus ascendant, and other people have seen me, has said to me that they felt I was a strong person. Maybe that's what that's attributed to. I don't know if I believe their assessment of me, but I will say maybe that's because I have the Taurus rising. And Taurus can also be seen by others as being very patient and maybe moving slow and somewhat plodding, though that may not always be the case. Taurus is very methodical, I think, is what it is. Taurus may not see themselves as being very slow moving, for example. So anyway, now the next sign, Gemini. Well, Gemini is a sign, okay, where Gemini may appear to others as being somewhat scattered, somebody that can do a lot in a short time, very versatile, multifaceted, multi-talented, but can come across as flighty and fickle to others as well, and very mercurial. Now, and also, I think Geminis what people pick up on Geminis, what they think about them often is that them being exceptionally streetwise. Now, it's interesting because I have a friend that I knew in school that has the moon and ascendant in Gemini. And he said to me one time, and he said it like he knew he was right, and I think he was. He said, "Do you think I'm more," he said, quote, "do you think I'm more streetwise than you," or something similar to that. And I feel he was. He was a pretty quick-witted person. He didn't seem like many people were going to outmaneuver or outsmart him. He was very, very, very streetwise. And now, Geminis may not really be as scattered as how others may see them, and I think that's a thing to look at as well. And they kind of know what they're doing. They might do something for a little bit, go to the next thing, but then a lot of times I think they go back to that first thing they started that was incomplete, and then do what they can to try to finish everything at some point. Anyway, now the next sign, Cancer. Well, I think Cancer can be seen often as overly, excessively emotional, temperamental, moody. And I think the thing that I've heard even said about me a lot, and many of you may know I have a sun in Cancer, is about taking things maybe too personally. And I think that's the thing that seems to be emphasized a lot with Cancer, and the fact that they are very sensitive. But on another side, on a positive side, I have a friend that has a Cancer ascendant, and she told me that she likes to nurture her friends and people she cares about, and I think that's the strong Cancer ascendant coming out. And Cancers can be very sympathetic and compassionate as well. They may not always think that they take things personally, but that could be seen by others because their reactions are probably a little bit stronger on average as far as things, even sometimes with, I think, when jokes is someone just being flippant, I think. So, and they may take it to heart. Well, anyway, the next sign, Leo. Well, when others see Leo, I think sometimes they could come across maybe to others that maybe a little bit arrogant or a little bit ostentatious or really acting like they're all-knowing. I think a lot of this is attributed to the fact that when Leo actually, when they speak, they come up with speak with a lot of authority and self-assuredness and confidence. But it's not necessarily always about because they're arrogant, but others may see them as that way. Leos are naturally showy as well. They could be very flamboyant and they could stand out in a crowd. A lot of this is just attributed to just the general charisma that a Leo exudes. And Leos can often be what others when they think about Leo, I think when they think about the Leo zodiac sign, they think of somebody with a lot of courage, like Aries, with a lot of fortitude, and somebody that can be very untiring. Leo can be known for nearly inexorable energy. They just stay at it. And my grandfather, God rest his soul, had a Leo son. I don't know what his ascendant was or moon sign, because his moon could have been in Capricorn or Aquarius depending on the time of birth. But anyway, he seemed to just work vigorously, whatever it was, until it got done, until it got to the end. And he, even in his older years, he worked with such an abundance of energy. He had such a strong vitality, it's not even funny. But anyway, now, with Virgo, I think as far as what others think about Virgo, well, they could come across to others as not always having the overabundance of confidence or self-esteem. And I think a lot of this is Virgos may not even think this about themselves, but with Virgo, a lot of this is associated and attributed to the fact that Virgos can often be very reticent and very humble, and they just don't want to boast or talk about their abilities or necessarily or come across as being arrogant or a braggart. So I think you have to factor that in. And Virgos can also look rather pensive and worrisome, and I think Virgos probably, out of all 12 signs, probably do have the strongest propensity for worrying, though, I would say. And Virgos often can come across, I think, a little bit prudish, and I think that's what others, when they see Virgo, that's what they may think. But they're really, Virgos, like the other two earth signs, Capricorn and Taurus, can be more demonstrative and sensual and private. They just don't like, a lot of times, showing those feelings outwardly in front of others in public. Now, the next sign, Libra. Well, I think Libra, what they come across to others is that when they see Libra, I mean, Libra is very peaceful and can be very passive and non-confrontational. And maybe people see, a lot of times can see this as some kind of weakness with Libra. But what people have to realize is that the reality is that Libra can actually have a very strong personality and abhor injustice and will fight for their beliefs when necessary. You can't really just, when you look at them, you kind of see a lot of times just a regular, ordinary person and somewhat placid sometimes at times, and in some, but you don't mistake that for weakness. And I think a lot of times people have that misconception about Libra, and you can't mistake somebody that just looks like a regular person, and because they don't seem like they're very combative or the type to be combative, that is certainly not weakness. And they could be actually a lot stronger than what people, I think, when they initially see them. So that's something to look at. Now, I think what people think about Scorpio often is they see Scorpio and sometimes in a negative connotation and think, well, these Scorpios is vengeful or they could be very vindictive. And sometimes Scorpio can, out of all the signs, perhaps they can. But a lot of it, what it is with Scorpio, is that Scorpio does a lot of times will not exact revenge on somebody that did them wrong, but they will retain that memory of that injury for probably forever. Scorpio can forgive, but just doesn't forget. Being a fixed sign, they're not going to forget things very easily, and they're not ever, I don't think Scorpio ever forgets an injury to directed at them by another, or kindness either for that matter, a benevolent act as well. But the thing with Scorpio is if they do exact revenge, they have the best. They usually come up with the best ideas for it of all 12 zodiac signs, I would say. And Scorpios can actually be very loyal and steadfast companions. And Scorpios can come across as a little bit guarded, I think. I think how others think of Scorpios a lot, but the reality with Scorpio is that they could be very secretive and mysterious and just don't like to let people into their lives unless those people have earned their trust and respect. And that's what that is about, I think. Now, Sagittarius, when you look at Sagittarius, as far as what people think about Sagittarius, well, I mean, Sagittarius can come across to others. I mean, they are very jovial and jocular. They have a very strong, robust sense of humor. They can be whimsical. They're very philosophical, and that they seem very lighthearted about things. But I think others think Sagittarius is all head in the clouds, a lot, and naive. And Sagittarius is not necessarily naive. You might have some that are, but I think with Sagittarius, they like to see the good in others, and it's not that they have blinders on. They just don't want to see. They're similar to Pisces in the sense that they don't want to see the negative, and they don't want to really emphasize or accentuate the negative in others. And I think that's something to look at as far as this sign goes. Now with Capricorn, next sign, I think what people think about Capricorn, I think they see Capricorn often as being very consistent, but at the same time can be very one-sided in how they maybe are seen by others. Capricorns, even though it's not a fixed sign, Capricorn can be very resolute in what they believe. Capricorn a lot of times will not go outside their own box, and they could seem very conservative. And Capricorns can seem like come across seem to others as sometimes callous or undemonstrative. And at times they may be, but they're not. But in general, what it is Capricorns will not generally show their emotions in front of really as much in front of others. The earth signs, unlike the water signs, are generally not as emotional. But I think the emotions with earth signs, when they do come out, they're actually more protracted. And really that's what Capricorn really seems like, that they don't. They come across to others. People see that strong, serious, and stern disposition which they have. But what it is Capricorn can actually let loose and be more capricious and whimsical. But I think what it is that what a lot of people don't understand is that Capricorn is very engrossed in what they're doing. They have a one-track mind. They're very businesslike, and when they're trying to do something, they are just so focused and determined and have such great discipline. But others don't always see it that way. Others just a lot of times see Capricorn, somebody that we can joke with him. He's always constantly serious. But the reality is the other side is there. The jocular side with Capricorn is there, but it's not present a lot because of their focus on what they're doing. So anyway, now I think the next sign, Aquarius, well, what people think about zodiac signs and they think about Aquarius, well, it seems like I'll hear people say weird a lot. Well, I think weird is a little bit harsh, and I think with Aquarius is more eccentric. Aquarius can be very progressive. They're very unorthodox. They just don't like to be stagnant or set in certain ways. What everybody else does a lot. They feel, well, if a lot of times if something is legal and I could do this, then by so be it. I'm going to be the one to try to do something different and not just be set in what everybody else wants to do. And what it is that, or that way of doing things which the majority do in that particular way. And it does come across as bizarre sometimes to others, and people will say that word about Aquarius, I think, a lot. And the thing about Aquarius is just that they could be very unconventional, and they like to do things their way. And they certainly don't, a lot of them, I don't believe, think that they're really bizarre, but they do think that they're unique and they're different a lot of times than the other 11 zodiac signs, and really more unique on average in which they are. So that is something to look at. Now, as far as what people think about Pisces, well, I think when people think about Pisces is that, well, Pisces can come across, I think when people see Pisces is not always realistic, and a lot of times they're not. I mean, Pisces can be a sign that is very dreamy, that could be very idealistic, and I think what people see with Pisces is that Pisces a lot of times, okay, will overlook the transgressions of others, but it doesn't mean they don't know they exist. I think Pisces does know a lot of the negatives in the world and with people, but they're similar to Sagittarius, that way they just don't like to talk about them. And I think that when people see Pisces a lot, they think, oh, they're naive or they're oblivious to things of the world, and as far as being streetwise, which really often is not the case. And I think what it is that people they see that in Pisces because Pisces is not expressing those things that they think that people think the consensus may think Pisces doesn't have. It's just that they're not emphasizing those things necessarily. And I think the reality is that Pisces may often live in their own reality. Granted, don't get me wrong, they like to go and retreat into their own world to recharge that emotional battery, so to speak, but it doesn't mean that they're oblivious to the world around them and what is going on. And I think that's something you have to look at. And people may think they're a little bit more unrealistic than they actually are. Pisces might be unrealistic, but I think people, to some degree, but I think people think a lot of times it's even more so than what Pisces actually is. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for what people think about the zodiac signs. And stay tuned next time, where I'll be continuing my zodiac sign compatibility series. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone. Because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.